Thank you, Sue. And this is quite an honor today with Sandy here today and come all the way up from Florida. And I'm really looking forward to listening and get here shortly and not miss it. They're coming from different places in the state. And when Sandy was here, I got thinking about the history a little bit. And there's one little story with, that's got to do with the church right over here, that little white church there. And this goes back to Bill's grandfather, Grandfather Wilson. Grandfather Wilson was known as the town drunk and the town statesman. And he died a few years before Bill was born. But, you know, that's again the third generation. And this here was quite the hotel. The town was close to 2,000 people. It had 5 bars in town. And, of course, this was the main bar. And out there was double railroad tracks. And, in fact, where the post office there was a railroad siding there, and there was a nice loading dock, and that's where they used to carve out tombstones there. And, by the way, right in back of that was Wombley's clapboard factory, the one that Bill talks about in the traditions. But let's get back to the church for a minute and Bill's grandfather, being known as the town drunk and town statesman. And this is when the Temperance League was going. And they'd have, the women were smashing up furnitures, this and that. And there's a lot of records about that right up in the town hall here, about you could only serve hard-cider and the rules on hard cider for the hotel and so forth. Well, this church over here, they had a Sunday where they were going to call in another preacher to save all the souls that this person couldn't save on the temperance. And this is when they were really smashing up bars, so the bars decided they're going to close. So Bill's grandfather takes off on top of Mount Aeolus. Now, there's no proof of this, but being the town known as the town drunk, can you imagine going up on a nice Sunday morning without a jug in your back pocket? I mean, so it's a 99 and 9/10% that he had a jug with him. Well, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he comes down off the mountain, and he starts heading for the church. And he had a very determined look on his face. He got to the church, opened the doors, and he starts taking some pretty powerful strides up to the pulpit. And the people were just aghast staring at him. He got to the pulpit, and he told the preacher, "Get down." And they just didn't know what to do with him. Well, anyway, Bill's grandfather got up and talked for the next hour about the blinding white light and being in the presence of God. And that's the same experience as Bill had. And when I walk by that, I keep on thinking about that. And also how it affected Bill growing up. Here's another wacky part of his family. When you really go into it, the mother taking off to Boston to become a doctor and so forth. And now here's a grandfather, a little bit nuts, with the best bar in town. He turns out to be some kind of a religious fanatic and stops drinking. So anyway, maybe we'll come up to a few more stories about Bill, but now we'll get back to Sandy and let him start, and I'm really looking forward to listen to this. So thank you, Sandy.
Thank you very much. Echo in here? Well, hi everybody. My name's Sandy Beach, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Sandy. Let's start out with our preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Well, I'm certainly delighted to be here in this very spiritual setting, and I'm sure all the rest of you are feeling the same energy that I am. It's just wonderful to be here. I don't think I slept as well as I did last night, and it's just been marvelous, and I'm looking forward to all day and tonight and tomorrow. They've scheduled me for a lot of hours. And as I looked over the schedule, I realized there were more hours than I know. So there will be longer breaks. And things like that. And so this first hour, rather than getting into any material, I was just going to give you a little background on myself, and then we'll go around the room and see where everybody came from and help us to get to know each other. And then we'll start in with a couple of sessions on the history before lunch. This isn't too far from where I grew up. I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, and loved the area, had a pretty nice little childhood. My sister is 3 years younger than I am, and she has 25 years in AA. I never knew she drank until she announced I was going to the Connecticut convention one year. I had 12 years, and I was speaking there, and she wanted to know if she could go. And I thought it was to hear me, and it turned out on the way up to Hartford, she was going, I have this terrible problem. And so at the convention, we got her a sponsor from West Haven, Connecticut, and she hadn't had a drink since. And so it's just amazing how that worked out. And I'm not going to go into my story per se. I grew up in New Haven. I went to a local prep school there. I went into Yale. The Korean War was going on. Everybody had joined the military. When I got out, I got in the Marine Corps. And almost flunked out when I started drinking because my grades got so bad, and alcohol just took over my whole life. But the Marine Corps straightened me out for a while when I was in the initial phases, but then I decided to become a pilot, and flight school was a little more lenient than that infantry stuff, and they let us alone at night, so I could still party pretty well. Got married, made it through flight school, and became a jet fighter pilot, which I did for the next 11 years. And we had, after the first year of marriage, we had 1 child, the second year, 2 child, third year, 3 child, fourth year, 4 child, fifth year, 6th year. And I'm looking around, it's getting real crowded around the house. I'm going, wow, look at all these kids around here. And there wasn't any planning, there wasn't any thought about it. It was just, well, yeah, okay, here's more kids. Let's go celebrate, drink, party, do all these things. So on the outside, it would look like my life was going along pretty well, but on the inside, the alcohol was finally taking total control and was causing me to get in a lot of trouble, and eventually took over to the point where it was terrifying to fly because I was going through withdrawal symptoms. You weren't supposed to drink for 12 hours, and 12 hours would start the withdrawals. And so I would be in the plane during withdrawals, and that would cause me to lose vision. I'd have heart racing and sweating, and my just the anxiety level would go through the roof. And so after about 6 months of that, with a lot of close calls, I finally went to a doctor. And I hated to go to doctors because that meant they would get into your life, and they might find out something. But I had to, and they agreed I had a terrible problem. So they sent me down to Pensacola, Florida, which is sort of the center of naval aviation, where all the expert doctors were. And that was in the 60s, and in those days there was no disease of alcoholism in the Navy. So you had to be diagnosed with something other than that, because there was no such thing. And so when I went there, they started testing me. What could cause this guy to be having all these problems? And the only things they had to go on were that I had very high blood pressure, my eyes were all bloodshot, I was confused, disoriented, I trembled all the time, my body was covered with a clammy sweat, and I reeked of alcohol all the time, morning, noon, and night. And it was like that was just not enough of a clue as to what was going on, so I remember a dentist, he was looking, and I wouldn't go to the dentist year after year after year, even though it was free, because it was too terrifying to be in a dental office. They could smell your breath. They were right in your face, and the shakes, and I knew they were going to ask me to take, when you go to the dentist, every so often they'll go, okay, rinse out, and there's a little cup up here, and it's filled right over to the top, and you're supposed to get it. And, well, I knew that it would just go like this when I reached for it. So I just didn't go. And I'd just reschedule all year. And then I'd be back for the annual physical the next year, and the dentist would just go crazy. He said, you haven't been, your teeth are rotting out of your head, and you got free dental care. And that just went on. Okay, yes, sir, I'll be there. And then I just wouldn't show up. So anyway, this dentist is looking at this mess, and he smells all the alcohol, and he was very concerned. You just reeked, and you reeked yesterday of alcohol. And I said, well, I got very drunk last night. And he had this look of relief, like, well, then that explains it. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, okay, well, that's probably why he reeks of alcohol. So had I said, well, I don't drink, then we would have had a problem, because he would have wondered, well, how could you reek of alcohol? So the upshot of the story is, at the end of the 2 weeks, the diagnosis was left to the psychiatrist, and they came up with childhood fear of flying that somehow was hidden for 12 years and suddenly started showing up, and that I was not allowed to fly anymore. And so I went back. I was stationed in Cherry Point, North Carolina, waited 3 months for Headquarters Marine Corps. Now, I was a career officer, and so they had to give me a new specialty. And I got orders to become an air traffic controller. And I went down to Glencoe, Georgia, and made it through the school, which is a very hard school. And my last year drinking, that was what I was in charge of an air traffic control unit in Japan. But fortunately, when I checked into the unit, the Master Sergeant, the senior enlisted man in the unit, sized me up in about 2 minutes. And he just said, we were intense and all that. And he said, welcome aboard, Captain. It's good to have you here. Here's the town. He showed me all around. Here's your chair and coffee and all that kind of stuff. Don't go near the radar. That was his instructions, because he knew that if I was controlling any of the planes who were trying to come in when the weather was bad, it would have been dangerous not only for the pilots, but for the unit and for everything. So I just survived during that year. And without any restraints on drinking, I quickly became a daily drinker. I lost 50 pounds due to malnutrition. I stopped hanging out with people, even my buddies at happy hour. I just didn't want to be with them. I wanted to be alone. And I was drinking mostly vodka, grain alcohol, juice. And I was trying to eat by drinking orange juice. I could eat a little soup, but nothing else would stay down, so it just didn't really eat. And so that whole year was just like wasting away. And when I got back to the United States down in Quantico, Virginia, at a career school, I had a grand mal seizure and went off to Bethesda Naval Hospital, and we played the game again. I'm up there, and they're going, well, I wonder what could have caused this grand mal seizure. I mean, there was still, he must be studying too hard. Maybe it's his diet. Maybe it's this. And after about 10 days of testing, I went to DTs. And the DTs were classic. They were the moving walls in my room. The CIA was trying to interrogate me. They thought I was a spy, and they were sending doctors in disguises. And then to drive me crazy, they were moving walls. And so that, like, I'd be put in a room over here, and I was asked to identify what was in this room. And then when I came back out, this room would be a railroad station. You know what I mean? And then I'd go, how are they doing this? And it was so real. So about an hour's worth of that, and I just freaked out, and they captured me and put me in a straitjacket and locked me up in the nut ward for 6 months. There was no alcohol, so you were just in as a mental patient. And after, a couple weeks in there, the real mental patients realized that we were just drunks. And they resented that we were in there. It was almost like, what have you guys got? You just stop drinking and your problem will go away. I remember them saying that. And in other words, it was not a legitimate mental illness, and they saw through it right away. And it was sort of like the three of us alcoholics were outcasts in the nut ward. So it was just strange feeling to, wherever we went, we were at the bottom, you know what I mean? And Alcoholics Anonymous had been in that nut ward bringing AA meetings in '63 when my sponsor was there. And for some unknown reason, the head psychiatrist determined that they had cleared up all the alcoholics in the Navy and they didn't need AA anymore, and they had stopped it. And somehow they came back and tried one more time, and he said, well, maybe we got a couple of alcoholics in the Navy, so we'll go ahead and run a little speaker meeting. And so probably sometime in November of '64, I was on the nut ward, and the corpsman came in, all drunks fall in, right face, over to the elevator. And I was at a meeting, and I thought it was wonderful, and the guys told their stories. They were so happy about AA, and after the meeting, I went up to them, and I said, I'd like to get your phone number. I said, you guys really got a heck of an organization here. If I ever run into a guy with a drinking problem, I'm going to refer him to you. You know what I mean? I just, even being locked up in there, I wasn't connecting that I could belong in something like this. So when we were put in an outpatient status, which meant now they're going to eventually give me orders back to duty, and I could go home at night and on weekends. And I did that for a couple of weeks, and then it was a Sunday, football season started. And the Redskins were playing, and I had a rule in my house that you have to drink a beer watching the Redskin game. And you know when you make those rules? And I remember saying to myself, man, I'm going to have to sit here with the set off because I have this rule. So I think I'll get a beer and watch the game, even though they told me if I ever had a beer, that would be the end of my career. And they also told me, you know, first drink will get you drunk. So I drank the beer, watched the game, and one of the worst things in the world happened. Nothing at all happened. So I went to bed that night, slept like a baby, got up the next morning, 7 o'clock, driving up to the nut ward where I spend the day. All the way up there, guess what I thought about? You know, I had a beer yesterday, and nothing happened. I didn't get any. I didn't have to drink 10 more beers. I must be a former alcoholic. This cure must be quicker than I thought. You know what I'm saying? I mean, how are you going to handle the information that you had a beer and nothing happened? That's the worst thing that could ever happen because you're left with that in your head. And I just thought about it all week. I couldn't eat lunch. I was so excited about being free from alcohol. God, free at last, free at last. I'm just obsessed with alcohol for an entire week, thinking I was free. So the next weekend, and that's what I was obsessed about, my new freedom from alcohol. I had a beer, nothing happened. Isn't it exciting and wonderful? And so the next weekend, on the way home, I said, well, if I can have a beer, I could have a vodka. And I remember going in, and I honestly, in my heart, I bought a quart, and I really believed, as deep as you can believe it, that I was buying a year's supply. You know what I mean? I sort of said, this is like, you can get 50 drinks out of this thing if you just take a little small shot. I really had that feeling. Here's a year's supply that I'm bringing home. And it was gone that weekend, you know what I mean? It just, boom, just went. So now I'm going back to the nut ward, and I'm paranoid already, just 2 days of that type of drinking, and I had to bring a bottle in the car out in the parking lot just in case. And just knowing the bottle was in the parking lot made me feel better. You know what I mean? I'd get real nervous. I'd just go look out the window, and I could see the car, and I feel better because that booze is so close. And didn't even need to drink it to feel the effects of it. You know what I mean? It was just comforting to look out there, and there it was. But I knew they could see me. You know, I knew they all were looking at me. As soon as you do something wrong, then you have the feeling everybody's going to catch you. And so the next weekend, I knew I was going to get caught. And so I called AA on the outside, called the intergroup, Northern Virginia. And they said, yeah, we have a Marine, and he's down at Quantico. He's the only Marine sober down there, and we're going to send him over. And so I said, great, great. Well, then after I called, about 4 hours went by, and I got a couple drinks to stay down, so I called him back. And I said, actually, I'm okay. Tell him not to come. I've changed my mind. It was just a little premature that I called. And they said, I don't think we can get a hold of him. I think he's on his way. Oh, God. Well, I'll get rid of him as soon as he comes here. And when he knocked on the door, my memory tells me the door frame shook. And then I opened the door, no light came through the door frame because he filled the whole thing. And he was not a pilot, he was an infantry captain, and he was into explosive ordnance demolition. That was his job. He told me later it was a great job for an alcoholic because nobody was looking over your shoulder while you were working, But anyway, he just came in and just said, my name's Bill, this is a 12-step call, I talk, you listen, I want to talk to your family. Didn't even want to talk to me. Went right over to the kids, and they all lied and said I was a terrible father, and my wife made up all these horrible stories about me. And so he agreed that I was an alcoholic, and he said, come on, we're going to a meeting, going to Manassas, and we get in the car, and I think he said, we'll be going to one of these every night for 10 years. I don't think he said that, but that's what I heard. And the meeting was a group anniversary. It went on for 4 hours. They had dancing and food and all this. So now I'm sober 6 or 7 hours at the end of the meeting. And you remember what it feels like to be sober 7 hours. You need a drink bad. And he's talking about, spiritual growth and happy, and I'm going, I got to get home and get a drink and all that. And I told myself, if I don't get out of AA tonight, I may never get out. Because people there were very fanatical. People were celebrating 5 years of sobriety, and so that blew the day at a time. I saw through the day at a time thing that night, and I'm going, I hear them talking day at a time, but I know in their hearts they're hoping to stay here forever, So I tried to give him this speech on the way home. I made it up on the way home about tomorrow night's my birthday, the next night my wife's birthday, the next night this is not true, but I figured you wouldn't have to go to AA on children's birthday or wedding anniversary. So I had 8 days in a row of stuff, and then I figured he might just get lost somewhere. And I got out of the car when we got to my house to give him this, and he rolled his window down, and I came around, and my mind was given the talk, but it didn't get to my mouth. I was thinking this stuff, and he told me later I was making clicking noises with my with my mouth. I was just going, so he just looked at me for a while and then just said, listen, I'm going to pick you up tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Don't you take a drink. And he drove off. And I think as he drove out of sight, here it came. Well, I won't be able to go to the meeting, so I'm giving this talk to no one. And he just came back the next night, and off we went. And I haven't had a drink since then, and I still have the same sponsor. He's still alive and in Northern Virginia, and I call him on a regular basis, and that's pretty good to have the same sponsor for almost 37 years. Doesn't happen that often in the program because both of you have to stay alive for that to happen. And the relationship has to continue, and so that's basically a little bit of my background, so you know who you're hearing from when we get into the seminar. And for the rest of the time, we don't necessarily have to, we kiss. I guess if you want to, you could come up and grab the microphone, the alcoholics that are here, and just in a couple of minutes tell us your name, where you're from, your sobriety date, and why you came. And then we'll take a break at the end of that. And then why don't we start right over here. Can you slide on up? Or we can just pass this around?
Yeah, maybe we could just pass it around.
Will that work? That way it'll get on tape.
Good morning, everyone. I'm TJ. I'm an alcoholic. I got sober July 29th, 1990, and it wasn't anything that I did, that's for a fact, and I'm from Lambertville, New Jersey, Originally, though, I got sober in South Jersey, Cherry Hill. Thank you.
I'm an alcoholic. My name is Dave. My sobriety date is October 24th, 1994. I'm from Randolph, New Jersey. I was in the Marine Corps. They were going to make me a fighter pilot, but I ended up on the wrong flight deck, and I just love listening to Sandy, and I'm glad to be here and glad to be sober. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mary, and I am an alcoholic. I'm from Randolph, New Jersey. Dave's my husband. My sobriety date is July 15th, 1998, and it's a pleasure to celebrate my anniversary with Sandy Beach. And we were so excited when Dave says that you'll be speaking here. I think we planned this for the past couple of months, and I didn't even realize it was my sobriety date. And it's got to be God's will. It's not my will. If I planned it, I probably wouldn't be here. But thank God for everything and guiding me through this wonderful program. And it's a pleasure listening to you, Sandy. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is June 29th, 1998, and I came here with TJ. TJ asked me to come. I started out with motor vehicle problems and was forced to go to AA and hated AA. And now I absolutely love everything about it. I hope the intrigue never stops. I could spend forever walking around in here looking at the memorabilia, and I love listening to the speakers. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sue. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is July 4th, 1996. My home group meets here in the Wilson House, so I get to come and see lots of neat people, and I'm really glad to be here today. I was told you were a wonderful speaker, and I loved listening to you. And I thought AA worked one day at a time, and the first time around for me, I thought, well, I'll do AA today, and I can get drunk tomorrow. And eventually, the drunk tomorrows took over, and it took a while to get back. But I'm glad to be sober today. Thanks.
I'm Ann. I got sober in New London, Connecticut. My sobriety date is February 14th, 1998, and some women who are here now recommended that I come to see you speak.
Hi, my name is Sue. My sobriety date is October 19th, 1998, and one of your tapes that was given to me, kept me sober for the first year. Yours and a couple of others that I just listened to on my radio every time I was in the car on the way to a meeting, which was, every day, sometimes twice a day for that first year. And so I'm really happy to be here from Concord, Massachusetts, originally from San Francisco, California. And I love coming to the Wilson House. This is my second time here, and it's great to hear you, Sandy. Thank you.
I'm Barbara, and I'm an alcoholic from living out of my car in the last month, more or less, because I've been traveling. And I heard you the first time, Sandy, in Connecticut a couple of years ago, and I am a Wilson House junkie, and I'm here a lot of the time, but I knew I had to be here this weekend, and there are lots of people here I know, so this is wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary, and I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic from Ashland, Massachusetts. My anniversary date is December 1st, 1980. I worked all last year for a fighter pilot up at Hanscom Air Force Base, and I spent the summer out at Nellis Air Force Base. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I wasn't sober today. So I heard you first in New Hampshire, way back a few years, and I'm glad to be back at the Wilson House. I'm a regular here. Thank you.
My name is Kay, and I'm an alcoholic, and my sobriety